For more than 2 decades, Bob Marks and I co-hosted a cable TV show called The Game. You may not have missed us, but we missed you. The game is back. The game is on.
I'm Bob Marks.
And I'm Mark Simon. We know you missed that opening music. Welcome to The Game. Bob and I will be doing regular podcast videos on politics, sports, business. We'll do interviews with local elected officials and try to stay on top of what promises to be an election year unlike any other. So we just thought we'd come back and do The Game some more. We hope you will follow us and join in the ongoing conversation we'll be having. And maybe we'll have a little fun along the way. We'll do all this with the able assistance of our friend and producer, Frank Bravo. And in case you were wondering, all Bob and I know how to do is talk. Frank actually has technical abilities that continue to remain a mystery to us. Bob, it's great to be back with you.
Good to be back with you, Mark. It seems like the last 14, 15 years has been kind of a blur, gone by very quickly. That may be part of just growing older. Life seems to go at a rapid pace.
I don't understand. You look the same as you did 20 years ago.
Well,
yeah.
Healthy
Bob,
living.
Tell me, why did you want to start doing The Game again? Why did you want to bring this back?
Obviously, as I've gotten away from being involved in politics, I still follow politics very closely. So it's a good opportunity to, let out what I'm seeing out there. It's an outlet, and working with you again is an additional treat.
Well, that's kind of you.
Why did you want to do this? You actually have a busier life.
Well, what you're alluding to, I think, is that I still write a weekly column for the San Mateo Daily Journal. And this sort of falls into that category for me as well. There have been times when I've realized how critical it is to be holding local elected officials accountable. And that doesn't mean you have to beat them up, although I'm not averse to doing so, but asking them questions. I was in the Daily Journal newsroom the other day, and one of the reporters there said she was talking to a candidate for one of the city council seats who said that the budget was very important to him. And when she asked him, well, what are the issues in the budget you want to address? He didn't know. So somebody needs to say to these people, well, you're going to be asked these questions, and they don't have to be hard questions, but you ought to be asked them. And also, we're in an interesting environment in politics in which people are much more free to take shots at each other on the personal level, and they're mimicking what's happening at the national level. And so I think we're in a position to say, we saw so-and-so say this about his opponent, and it's not true. Or maybe it's an issue that shouldn't be an issue. I wrote something in my column this week about somebody trying to make abortion an issue in a city council race. And I'd love to have that candidate on to say, tell me why you think abortion is an important issue for a city council to address.
When we started, you, of course, preceded me in being involved. But when we started, there were a number of newspapers that were covering things. And part of the newspaper business really not being profitable and having a difficult time, you really are the only real political voice. I guess there are some others there at the Daily Journal, but you're right. And social media has kind of run amok. And so people can say whatever they want. And a lot of people will take that as written on stones.
So let's talk a little bit about politics as our introductory show, which is all we ever want to talk about anyway. Give me your first impressions or your continuing impressions of the 2024 presidential campaign. It looks to me like Kamala Harris could have an opportunity to really transform this race more than she already has, but a lot of good things have to happen for her. What's your take on it?
My take is, if you look at it today, she has a 1.7% lead nationally. But in the swing states, they're all within the margin of error. Poll out today, Hill Emerson, she's up in 3, Trump's up in 3, Pennsylvania, they're tied at 48-48. So I think what we have is the most clearly defined candidate, perhaps in American political history, against the least defined candidate in American history. What does that mean? It means that her support is softer, his support is firmer. Her support could go up or could go down more easily. The amazing thing is, if you look back at when she got in the race, Trump's favorable rating hasn't changed a bit. It's still 44.2 as it is today. She's gone from 38 up to 47%. So that's a pretty large jump. The other thing to keep in mind with the race is forget about the national numbers as much as you can, except for the fact that vice president is going to need to win the popular vote by 2 to 2.5% in order to be competitive in the Electoral College. Hillary Clinton won by 2.1%, and Trump won the Electoral College with a pretty big, decisive win. So that's a factor that's out there. Really, we're talking about 7 states: Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and North Carolina. Let's call them Purpleville. And in Purpleville, the attitudes are different than, say, they might be in California or some other places. Whether it's guns, climate, immigration, jobs, the economy, people have a different perspective there. So what does Trump need to do? He needs to define Harris with hundreds of millions of dollars of TV ads in those 7 states, using her own words. Let her voice describe where she's at. And he needs to drive down her favorable from 47 down to probably 45. Would probably do the trick if everything else stays the same. And he needs to avoid any kind of, excuse me, any kind of debate implosion. I think both candidates need to do that. As far as Harris, she needs to do what she's been doing. Try very hard to not be defined as much as possible, muddy the waters on her past issues when she ran in 2019 and the positions that she's taking today. She also needs to make people feel comfortable that she's can be the commander in chief. They need to be able to see her in that role. And then she needs to jack up the turnout to historical levels in Purpleville. I think in the end, this race has the potential to come down to a 2000 Bush-Gore kind of finish, where it's one state and a very tight race. And I think that's the one thing that we all hope doesn't happen, because we may never get a result out of that.
Yeah.
But you, how do you see it?
Well, I think your points are all well taken. I do think some of the things you're talking about, she managed to achieve at the convention. She certainly seemed presidential. She made a point of talking about foreign policy, which is an important credential for her to have. I was thinking about her and in the context of J.D. Vance. You know as well as I do, you don't just show up at the presidential level ready to go. You have to get ready. It's a whole different stage no matter where you've been in politics. I think 4 years ago, she was not ready. She didn't have the gravitas. She wasn't as prepared as she should be. I think she's a different person now, certainly a different candidate than she was 4 years ago, a stronger candidate. And there's a sense of she got more rocks in her pocket. She's been in the Situation Room. She has a stronger sense, I think, of who she wants to be. She has the Obama team helping her with her campaign, basically running the campaign, which is a real smart move, I think, because I think a lot of what she's doing now is very similar to how Obama succeeded, not talking about race, doesn't need to, staying focused on the issues that matter to people. The contrast, the example of not being ready, J.D. Vance is sort of the poster boy. He's just not ready. And that's what I mean is you don't just stroll out on the stage and start saying things that are going to resonate with people. You're busy backtracking, which he often is. And obviously his job is to be the attack dog. But it's a tough position for somebody who's really only been in national politics, if you want to call the Senate that, for about 2 years. So there's a tough row for him to hoe. How much of a difference that makes, I don't know. But it certainly, you add a vice president hoping it expands your base. She did a better job of that, I think, than Trump did. I want to go back to what I said at the beginning. With all the caveats that you put in, which I tend to agree with, but as we speak, the day we're recording this, she's going to do her first interview on CNN. I would not be surprised if it goes very well. She's going to prepare. She's going to be well prepared. And then within a couple of weeks, we have the first debate. If she sort of hits a home run in the first interview and then hits a home run in the debate, I could see that it could transfigure the entire race, that it could be sort of a tidal wave that Trump can't stop. And then compounding that is Trump's success in politics has been entirely on his own personal conviction of his talents, his abilities as a campaigner. I had an old coach who used to tell me, what got you here won't get you there. The challenge for him is that what's gotten him where he was so far may not work anymore. Clearly, his core isn't going to go anywhere. But there are a large number of voters, largely in those purple states that you're referring to, who voted for Obama and then voted for Trump. So they're not diehard committed Trump supporters. They're somebody looking for something that's going to change the status quo with which they're unhappy. I don't know if Trump can change his rhetoric sufficient to keep those people. And after 8 years of this, I think some of his act is just wearing off on people.
Yeah, well, I think that's a big question. I think people have made up their mind about Donald Trump. They love him, they hate him. That's not going to change. So it's really up to Harris to try to reach that level where the people who are kind of throwing their hands up and saying, I don't really like either of these people, decide, well, let's go a new direction. Let's try something different. I think that's really going to be the challenge. But we're so locked in terms of the numbers. And when you look at the history of the last two elections, which is the best indication of what's going to happen, it's going to be a close race. There's a limit to how far up she can go. And again, people don't know her. Doesn't mean that she can't come out, as you say, and really do a good job in the debates, answer a lot of the questions, and she can, go ahead and win the race, because I don't think his favorable is going to go up much.
Real quickly, let's talk about the local elections. We have over 24 city council races on the ballot, many of them district elections. In fact, most of them, many of them incumbents being challenged, which was really kind of part of the point of district elections. Are there some key issues you've noticed? I mean, you were out of the county for a while, you're back, you've dropped in. I know you pay attention. What do you think are the 3 or 4 issues that voters probably want to hear about, no matter what city they're in or what district they're in?
Well, I think in the city council level, housing, actually through all levels, even the presidential race, is a huge issue. And I think that the cities have been put into a position where they have to have a certain amount of housing to secure state funding. And I think that battle is going to continue to go on. I think the future of transportation, something that a lot about, is Caltrain. How are they going to make up the ridership that they've lost? BART. Is San Mateo County somehow forced to become part of BART, which, as you said, and I agree with you 100%, would be a big mistake. And so I think, and also you've got the growing diversity of the county. And so some of that you're beginning to see in city council races. where people, personality-wise, are different. Some of it may be cultural. Some of it may just be their personalities. So I think those are some of the things. What do you think?
Well, I think you're right, and I think what we're seeing is the changing of the guard. You know, two of our senior members of Congress have left Congress. Obviously, Jackie Spear is still on the Board of Supervisors, but that's not a long-term career move for her, I suspect, going back to a Board of Supervisors seat. We're seeing the end in our politics of the domination, the complete domination by sort of middle-aged white guys,
Mm-hmm.
and that doesn't include us anymore because neither one of us,
Yeah, exactly.
unless we plan to live to 130.
Yeah.
So there's a rising tide. What's interesting is that I think if you had asked either one of us 15 years ago, we would have expected the Latino community to more thoroughly assert itself. And there's some of that, but I think they're being outstripped by the Asian community, which is much more active, much more directly involved in both business and in politics in this area. And I think we're just seeing the beginning of them emerging as a force in the county. I agree with you. Housing is still the number one issue, and I'd lump that in with the cost of living. I don't think homelessness is quite the concern it would have been, because this county has actually done a pretty good job of sort of cleaning that up, if you will. Safety, the economy. I think the most common thing I hear from people is it's just so expensive to live here. And people like children of ours and children of friends of ours have to leave. They can't stay. And that changes the nature of this area. I don't know if the politics has begun to reflect that or even address that yet, but I think that's an issue that will force itself onto the agenda. So it's going to be a busy year, lots going on, lots for us to talk about. And I know, Bob, I'm looking forward to doing this. I'm happy to be back with you. And I think we're going to have a lot of fun this year.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fascinating couple of months, both at the national level, at the local level. So let's get on with it. Let's start doing the shows. Hopefully we can get the word out, and some people actually watch it. That's always an encouragement. But,
well, it was always nice on our old show when we would get a letter from our fan.
Yeah.
So yes, let's stop blathering. We'll see you the next time we do this show, which will be relatively soon. I'm Mark Simon.
I'm Bob Marks.
Thanks you for being with us, and we'll see you next time on The Game.